Hi everybody, it's Carlin and Ian from the Real Outdoor Experience, and we are in Manitoba, an hour or so north of Brandon, and we are with Ken Mickey and Dean Tremblay from Bushnell's Trigger Effect. And what a treat it has been for Carlin and I to be able to come out to Manitoba and spend a couple of days in the field, and getting to know you guys as individuals, and shooting some birds. It's just been an absolutely magical couple of days. Obviously watching your show, getting to talk to you and meet you at the Toronto Sportsman Show a couple of years in a row. We've had an opportunity to get to know you a little bit, but one of the things we've never really talked about is how you actually started in the outdoors. Like, I know, Dean, you're a biologist with background, as are you, Kent, and you've got a guiding background as well. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about sort of how you started? Kent.
Or go ahead, Dean. You started off.
Oh yeah, sure. Throw me under the bus. Well, I come from a hunting family. I always make the joke, but it's not a joke. I was born August 22nd. My first hunting trip was September 10th, literally. My grandfather was a bit of a host for radio and newspaper for hunting, and I grew up with that. And in our household, we didn't have, pork roasts and, chicken. We had mule deer and cougar. That's what I grew up with. And so to become a biologist, I wanted to do Kent's route, which was big game guiding, because my grandfather was a guide, but my grandfather was brutally honest with me, and I know Kent will attest this, but he says, grandson, if you want to make some money, don't go into guiding, go do something else in the outdoors. So that launched me into my career as a biologist, and I became a biologist because it was related to hunting. I really craved that knowledge, that deep understanding of animals and habitat and environment, and it drove me through my whole career. And that whole time I was hunting as well, and really that's my story. I dabbled a bit in big game guiding too. I'm kind of the opposite of Kent. I was mostly a research biologist and dabbled in guiding, whereas Kent was a professional guide and dabbled in biology.
Yeah. Well, and I started my career very similar to Dean's. My family, my father, my uncles, most of my background family was into hunting. And again, we hunted to put meat in the freezer. I got the bug early when I was a kid. Mom was always worried about where I was, because I was gone with the dog up the valley. Yeah. She knew where my brother was 24/7, but I was off in the woods, and I really took that passion to the next level with my schooling. I wanted to be in the wildlife field somehow with my education. I went to university and got a degree in wildlife and fisheries. Unfortunately, the time that I graduated was a time when the Canadian government was really stepping back their funding to the wildlife and conservation. So I took the opposite route of Dean's grandfather's advice. I said, well, if I can't be in the wildlife industry as a professional biologist, I'm going to go in as a guide. And I've had relatives that were in the guiding industry and helped me get my foot in the door. And I took that torch and I ran with it and became a professional guide, and worked for some really fantastic operations, and made a pretty good reputation for myself in the industry. And then, nearing the end of that career in guiding, I met this fellow, and we played hockey together, and I find out he has an environmental consulting firm, and they're looking for a field biologist, and I figured I was qualified, and I applied with Dean, and he hired me, and we spent several years working in the woods doing wildlife research and fisheries and hunting every spare moment we had together. And then later on, that's when we decided that when Dean was getting nearing the end of his research biology career, and my legs and lungs were getting too tired to go up those mountains for clients anymore, we decided to start the TV shows. So
I remember I was probably about 12 years old. And I'd done lots of grouse shooting and everything like that, but I was 12 years old with my grandfather, and we went up and we spotted a young mule deer buck, and my grandfather looked at me and said, I've earned my stripes, and handed me it was an old model 940 30 lever action open sight, and he says, it's time for you to be a supplier for the family. And I shot my first deer, and I just remember it wasn't so much about the harvesting of the animal, but it was going home that night or not that night, but later on when they served the first meal with that deer that I shot, and seeing everybody around the table enjoying it, and it was just like
Every hair on my arm is standing up right now.
yeah, it was just I don't know, like hunting is so deep that way, like it's like people see it that it's just us going out and shooting, but it's not. I sat there and I had aunties and uncles and my grandma, my grandpa, my dad, and they're all eating something that I took off the land myself, and it was just, I was hooked at that moment, it was just, I knew from that moment on I was going to be a hunter until the day I died.
My experience was before I was actually legally allowed to carry a firearm. I used to participate in the hunt as a deer driver. Here in the province of Manitoba, the way we used to hunt in groups, and we would do deer pushes. And I couldn't be kept at home or in school when the deer season was on. It was a short season. It was generally about 4 days. And yeah, I couldn't help it, but I had to go with Dad and the crew, and I think that camaraderie of actually being with that crew was just like, that was a elite group.
Yeah.
These men did what they did once a year, and it was the only time all of these men were together, and I finally made it into that group. and it just hooked me from there on.
It's a fraternity.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really what caught me. My dad would come home and then he talks about his experiences in the bush, moose hunting, and I was really small when he was doing that. Then I got into deer hunting with him and became part of the boys. And every year it was a father-son hunt, and then more father-sons joined us, and it was just something that became that kind of a surreal experience. Now the hair standing up on my
And it's that passion.
It is. It really is. And that really is truly what we're all about. To pass that on to my kids. I'm going to get misty just talking about it. It's so special.
I think one of the things that you don't realize when that happens to you is that is your moment when it's passed forward.
Yeah.
And us as sportsmen and lovers of the outdoors, we have to take that into consideration and remember that and go, we need to do that again.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of our driving forces behind the TV show. Is Kent and I sat down and we said, we've had so many amazing experiences together as hunters and as biologists, and I mean, literally, we've spent our whole lives in the bush. Whether it's hunting or as biologists, we spent our whole lives in the bush, and it wasn't just a legacy for, our kids and our family, but we thought, we'd like to share that with other people, because, that time of being in the bush full time is really disappearing. Our lifestyles now are getting to be more and more urban, and, those skill sets of going out there and being able to survive are disappearing. And so for Kent and I, really Bushnell's Trigger Effect was kind of our small legacy of being able to leave two guys who basically grew up together and shared a passion together and loved the wilderness to say, here you go, world, take it for what it is. And
whether that wilderness is 300-kilometer jet boat ride into the mountains, or just in your backyard, it's what we love to share, and we want to pass that on to the next generations and the people like us that also appreciate it.
Well, you're definitely leaving your name and your mark on the North American outdoor industry, and just fantastic. It's funny, we all talk about, wanting to be part of that boys club and growing up and seeing our dads do that sort of thing. One of the things that I'm enjoying these days is seeing more women get involved, and seeing, so many young girls coming out to the youth outdoor day that we do, and it's nice that it's not just a kind of a boys club anymore.
Oh,
it
yeah,
really
for
is.
sure.
It's cool to see the way that it's evolving for us.
for me, I was really lucky. My Aunt Marlene, who Kent knows, she was a rarity in when I was young, because women didn't do the hunting, and so everybody, when she used to say, who got the deer, of course there's my grandfather and my dad and me standing there and they're looking, and my Aunt Marlene would be like, I got it. And it was like, people would do a double take then, but nowadays women are doing amazing things. I mean, there's some women out in the industry now that would put a lot of men to shame.
Yes,
absolutely.
But you're right, it is nice to see the sport field of hunting, changing.
Ken, Mickey, and Dean Tremblay from Bushnell's Trigger Effect, who are absolutely keeping it real. So Thanks again for having us out here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
You
guys.
bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Keep it real.